Good evening, everyone. Today, Enora Ankur,
And Nonit Singh Madhok,
the host for today's research guidance webinar, welcome the panelists and the attendees present with us. We, the Student Welfare Group, bring you an amazing opportunity, a webinar on pursuing a career in the research domain. We are delighted to have such insightful and experienced panelists here to guide us today. They will share their invaluable experiences, perspectives, and their journey into the research and development domain. They will be addressing a range of questions. Additionally, we encourage the audience to keep posting their questions and queries in the chat box as we will address them at the end.
before we start with the session, I would request the panelists to kindly turn on their webcams. I would request Mr. Govind Vanjalkar to please turn on his webcam.
Nia, ma, hivi macho mama anapotana. Ipa mama lintila petra ya. Ahora no debe. Entendeu?
We are delighted to announce our five exceptional panelists for today's session. Our first panelist for today is Mr. Pradyum Mahajan. We would love to hear about your research interests and a brief about the various projects you have worked upon.
Hello everyone, I'm Pradyum. Last year I was awarded the Dartwise Scholarship for a research internship in Germany. I worked with the Flight Robotics and Perception Group at the University of Stuttgart on synchronizing a number of gimbal-based cameras for target tracking. It's primarily a robotics problem statement, and my research domains are mostly in my core sector of aerospace engineering and in robotics.
Thank you, Mr. Pradyum Mahajan. Next, we have with us Mr. Govind Manjalkar. Could you also share a bit about your various research interests and the projects you have worked upon? Next, we have with us Mr. Govind Vanjalkar. Could you also share a bit about your various research interests and the projects you have worked upon?
Maybe having access issues.
Next, let's hear from Ms. Nishita Singh. We would also be glad to hear about your various projects and research interests.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Okay, I'm assuming that you can hear me. Hi, my name is Nishita, and I'm in my fifth year right now, and for my third year and fourth year, I went to Max Planck Institute for a research internship, and also at the University of Sherbrooke in Canada. And in both of the research experiences, I was working on a bioinformatics project, and specifically, I study how genes are regulated, how our DNA activity changes, and in one of the projects, I was specifically looking how it changes with age. Yeah, broadly speaking, I work on gene regulation and bioinformatics.
Thank you, Ms. Nishita Singh. Now, I would request Mr. Stephen Agarwal to tell us about his various research interests and the pursuits he has done over a long period of time at his time in KGP.
Hi guys, good evening. My name is Srijan Agrawal. I'm a fifth year dual degree student in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. And since my second year, I've been working on sustainability and renewable energy. It's not like pure core mechanical, as in uh, it involves energy engineering, electrical engineering, and mechanical engineering all at once. So yeah, last year when after completing my fourth year, I went. Sorry, not last year. In this year only, 2024 summer, I went to University of Manitoba to consult IKEA and Manitoba Hydro in designing net zero homes for the state of Manitoba in Canada. So yeah, it was a project at University of Manitoba, but we were in proper consultation to IKEA and Manitoba Hydro. Yeah, that was it.
Thanks, thanks a lot, Mr. Stephen Agarwal. I would request Mr. Govind Vanjalkar, as he was inaudible the last time, if he could give us a brief about his various projects. I'm extremely sorry for interrupting you, but
Mr. Govind Vanjalkar. Let us move on to the next panelist. We welcome Mr. Sanket Seerat. Please guide our young, inexperienced minds on how to pursue research as a career.
Am I audible? Can someone please
Yes, yes.
confirm if I am audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Can you
Yes,
please
you
repeat the
are.
question once? Can you please repeat the question once?
Sure, sure. I would request your guidance on how to pursue research as a career.
So good evening, everyone. First of all, my name is Sanket Kiran Bherud. I'm a fourth year undergraduate student in the Department of Chemical Engineering. Till now, I have had diverse research experiences in fields like computational catalysis, nanotechnology, for example, graphene synthesis, and currently I'm working on microfluidics at IIT Kharagpur. My project on nanotechnology was at University of Illinois at Chicago. So, in general, if you want to pursue research, you need in your higher studies, then you need relevant research experiences. For that, I have applied to various research internships in the past, and I'm going to do it in the future as well. So first, you need to find out your fields of interest, fields in which you are interested in working. You can do that by consulting some of your seniors, even some of your professors. Next, you can do some extensive literature survey on them, and you can apply for various funded research opportunities abroad as well as in India. That was the gist of the research experience.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our panelists for guiding us on the first step of this long journey. I know that we'll learn a lot from this session today. Let us start our discussion with the first question of the day and the event. How did you build a panelist network for your research project? Would any of the panelists like to go with this question?
Yeah, sure. I think for building up our research profile in our initial days, the thing is it's the safest option is to approach a professor in IIT Kharagpur itself in your home institution because if you are applying outside the institute or applying to competitive programs, they usually look for they mostly they want that you already have some research experience. So the person who is most likely going to give you an opportunity to work on a project as a fresher, as somebody who has never stepped into a lab, is probably going to be someone from IIT Kharagpur. So I approached a professor from the department, and then yeah, we started working on a project, and we had a decent rapport. And then he also recommended me for my tax, and from then on, yeah, it was uh, it was easy to apply to internships.
Well, I like to add on to this. I would suggest that if you are like approaching any professor, then don't just approach them randomly. I would say like consult some seniors before. This would give you an idea, like if the professor is encouraging or demanding, because it happens so that it might happen so that like, professor might demand you some exceptional results which you might not be able to deliver in first research internship and when you are just exploring. So yeah, I mean, you should always consult your seniors in that to know like the professors well in KGP also. Yeah.
Would any panelists like to add something on? Okay. Thank you so much for clearing this in such an effective manner. Moving on to the next question.
The next question is, how can we search for relevant courses in our institute related to our field of interest and what we want to pursue in the future? And who are the relevant people we need to contact for the same? Would any of the panelists like to initiate the discussion?
Sure. The first point of contact will be the relevant professors who are working in your field of interest. And after that, to get a fresh perspective, you can also consult some of your seniors. But I suggest first you find out the professors who are working in related fields.
Would
Uh,
anyone else want to add further points?
yeah, I think like I can walk you through my experience on this. So what I did was like in second year, so I was very interested in renewable energy and sustainability fields like this. So if you go to IIT Kharagpur website only, you might find, something like research in that, research pop-up box or something like that. And then when you click on it, there's a flow chart that appears. So you can always narrow down your interest. Suppose if you are interested in energy engineering, so there are like some schools and um, like there's a energy science school itself. So maybe you can find your professor there. And if not there, then maybe you should find, allied departments to energy engineering like mechanical, electrical, right? So yeah, like this you can ally yourself. So that's how I did it. But yeah, maybe your interest maybe in robotics. So robotics maybe in mechanical engineering you can find most of them, and aerospace also. And if you are like into composites, then civil engineering is a good option. So yeah, you have to narrow down first, and then you can search accordingly.
Thanks a lot. Now, that was really an informative discussion. Now, on to the third question.
Is it necessary to have a self project before applying for our first research internship? Or is having the fundamental knowledge or the keen interest about that research field sufficient?
Um, yeah, so I don't think a self-project per se is necessary. We can start our first internship here at IIT Kharagpur itself, and the professors are quite encouraging of students to take up projects under them, and that can be our first like experience into that field, and then that can be used for further competitive programs that you apply for.
In my opinion, for this question, I think when you're in your initial stages of any research internship projects, so professors don't generally demand you to know everything. Basically, a rudimentary knowledge about any field or something that you might have an idea of works because that's how you build onto a process. Basically, going through background knowledge and then working hands on some simulation or some any experimentation that you want to work on, and yeah, then that will serve as a future experience for getting more advanced projects into your research interests.
Well, I
Thank you for your
believe
insight.
that okay, yeah, I believe that probably self projects, like I personally believe that they are a waste of time because when you are doing self project, you are not affiliating yourself with any professor. So if you are not affiliating yourself with any professor, so in case if you are applying afterwards for research internships or anything abroad, it might happen. So you should need a letter of recommendation for the same, and that might not, like, self projects might not get you that. So it's better to get some internship under professors rather than doing self projects, because it gives you an affiliation to the professor. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question.
How did all of you prepare for your first research internship, both in India as well as abroad? And could you please tell a chronological order of the things we have to do to apply for a research internship abroad? Would any of the panelists like to initiate this discussion?
Yeah. So firstly, I'll talk about how I approached the professor in IIT KGP himself, and then for programs abroad. So for IIT KGP, I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do initially. So I just went on Coursera and looked at a bunch of courses, and then I saw that there were a few courses on bioinformatics, which I did, and then there were some. They had all these fun assignments where you could solve certain problems and stuff and put it on your GitHub. And then I used my Coursera thing to sort of tell my professor, okay, see, I have done this stuff and I have gained a little bit of proficiency in, let's say, Python programming, or I have like a little bit of interest in bioinformatics, and I would like to explore this further. And then I just showed up at his office, and yeah, and then he said, okay, write me an email. Describing your interests and stuff, and then we'll discuss projects. So usually that works. Also, I would definitely like to emphasize that it's important that you go show up to the professor's office and not just email them, because plenty of professors at IIT KGP do not respond to emails, especially if you're just cold emailing them for projects. So just show up to their office and tell them, I am interested in this. Can you, is there a project that I can help with? So that was for my first research internship. And when I was preparing for research internship programs, it was I think it depends on what kind of program that you are applying to. For example, something like MyTax, it did not require you to come up with a project proposal, or it did not require you to already be in touch with a professor beforehand. So that was pretty streamlined, and it did not require too much time. You just had to fill up the portal and arrange for a letter of recommendation. I think it's safe to talk to your professor who will be recommending you about like 2 to 4 weeks prior to your deadline, depending upon how busy your professor is, and then you can proceed with that. But for programs that need you to already be in touch with a professor abroad, and they need project proposals and stuff like that, then you have to, I think, I would recommend starting cold mailing professors like 3 months prior to the application deadline, so that you already have a response and you have a project plan discussed and everything, so you can proceed with your application. That's what I would suggest.
Thanks a lot. Would any of the other panelists want to add further points?
Yeah,
I would give
so
a. Oh, okay, yeah, go ahead.
so in my case, for the first research internship, I just done a course on control systems in my department, and which I really liked. So I approached the professor after that if I could do a project on it based on my performance. And she said that I could go ahead with it. And that was my first experience with it. After that, I did a project at IIT Delhi based on the work that I'd done here. And I used all of that in my on my CV for my DARD application. Now for foreign research internships, again, as Nishita said, like you have to start cold mailing professors 3 months prior so that you end up getting a favorable response from someone. So you look through the Google Scholar pages of different professors from different universities to see someone that matches your interests. And then hopefully they respond well to your emails and agree to take you under them for a project. And then based on that, you apply to the different scholarship programs.
So yeah, I have a tip for everyone. Like some of my friends did this and it worked out for them despite having a low CGPA. So what they did was that they actually mailed the professor in May 2023, and the professor, like cold mailing, and the professor replied by somewhere 2 weeks after that. So they started their internship by July end or something, July end of 2023, and then they continued in that internship for like December or so, like for 1 year. And then after like in March they requested the not in March, I think in January they requested the professor that if they can come offline in this summer 2024. And the professor, it's a very good probability that the professor would say yes if you are doing your internship in a very reputed universities. So yeah, the professor of course said yes, yeah, they can come to like to that university. And yeah, I think that worked out for them. So if you are planning to do like research internship and if you plan to go abroad, then this might work out well for you. uh yeah, okay, that's it.
Thank you, panelists. I feel like that combined answer really gave us a lot of pointers. Moving on to the next question. So, how difficult is it to build up a research profile that is completely different from your core department on your opportunities that are available for students from traditional engineering branches? Would any of the panelists like to answer this question?
So as someone who has done research work in her field itself, I don't think I'm the most qualified person to answer this question. But I can tell that I have definitely seen people, let's say from mechanical engineering and stuff, who ended up pursuing research internships abroad in, let's say, finance or stuff like that. So I would say that in an institute like IIT KGP, where you have so many different disciplines, departments, all kinds, humanities, entrepreneurship, and whatnot. I think it's beneficial if you milk that and try to, even if you don't have, if your educational background is in a completely different field. I think based on your practical experiences and projects that you can start working on here at your home institution, I think it's quite possible. I mean, even people who sit for placements, half of them, I mean, many of them do not end up pursuing careers relevant to what they, to their educational background. So, no, I would definitely say it's not as easy as working in your own field, but it's definitely possible, and I have seen people do it.
Thank you. Is there any panelist who would like to add to that? Thank you for your answer, Ms. Nishita. That must have answered many people's curiosity. Moving on to the next question.
Could you please inform us about the various research programs available both in India as well as abroad for both undergraduate as well as for higher studies? Any panelists would like to initiate?
So yeah, I have
Yeah,
a
so
I have a
you go ahead,
secret
Panelists.
tip. So what you can do is that you can search for any US university that you want to go in, or you want to contact a professor, and just type that university and type SURF, SURI, or SURP in front of them. So what they stand for is Summer Undergraduate Research Fellowship, Summer Undergraduate Research Initiative, and Summer Undergraduate Research Program. Okay, whatever you are searching, any university in the US only, and you can type these, like after that type this surf, suppose I am searching for Purdue University, so just type Purdue University surf program, and like I am 90% sure that out of 100 universities, at least 95 universities have these kind of programs. And once you contact the professor, you can ask the professor to fund you through this program. But this will only work for, I think, US universities only. I don't know about the European universities. So yeah.
Also, I think plenty of the serfs and SURPs are only like only US citizens and PRs are eligible for them. But yeah, if I think there are a few that do allow international applicants as well. So yeah, words to
Yeah,
know.
actually, no. Thing is that they are available for the US residents only, but some exceptions are made often. Like I know certain people
Okay.
who have
Yeah.
been, yeah, yeah. So
Mhm.
this might work for you.
So some of the surf programs that I know about are the Caltech Surf and the Purdue Surf. They take international students from India as well. And for research internships, undergraduate research internships in EPFL Switzerland, you can apply to E3 programs or summer at the EPFL, which is for computational sciences.
Yeah. Other than that, there's also Charpak for France and Swissnex for Switzerland.
Thanks a lot. That really gave us a long list about the various research programs most of us weren't aware about. Now, moving on to the next question.
With MyTax no longer accepting research interns from India, what alternative programs or opportunities would you suggest for Indian students looking for similar opportunities?
There are a few opportunities in Japan. Like for Kyoto University, you have KU Star program, and for the Tokyo University, you have UTRIP program for undergraduate researchers. And it should be noted that Tokyo University and Kyoto University are both well-known and established institutions of Japan. Both of these programs, UTRIP as well as KU Star, are fully funded and do not require any funding from your personal end.
So I had once curated a list for myself, although this might be just life sciences specific, but some of them might be general. I'm just going to copy paste them in the chat box. Some of them, I mean, it also probably includes my tax and dad as well, which are probably going to be discontinued. But I think this is a list that you can go through if you are interested in the life sciences.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing regarding the possible opportunities we could look at. I'm sure our attendees found this information very interesting, and we'll make this list available to everyone through the SWG website or app. Moving on to the next question.
People often wonder how you were able to manage your academics, your college academics, as well as your research projects together simultaneously during a semester. Would any of the panelists like to initiate?
Yeah, so about this question, I remember a very specific incident during the time when I pursued my one of my research internships, even during my semester in my third year. So it was like a very tough time balancing all the activities uh, combined. So what I did was, since the internship was a foil internship during that time, so I kept one half of my day just for studying academics, middle part of the day just to get sleep, and I used to like majorly work in the night time. So that worked out pretty well for me because it was like a balanced activity that was happening where my mind engaged in one of the activities during each section of the day. So yeah, that was what I did.
So what I did was like I asked my like whenever I was doing remote internship in under any prof, so what I did was that I usually asked professors to give me a 1 month off or a 5 week off, like during the time of my exams. So that comprises of 2 weeks of exams and 3 weeks of like my preparation time. So that's what I did, and rest all the time I was like working on the project. So that's one thing that you can go with probably. That worked out for me.
Thanks a lot, panelists. These tips would definitely be helpful for everyone. Now, moving on to the next question.
As people go abroad for further studies, do you think it results in financial burdens to the family? Also, what are the possible ways we could maybe deal with this? Any panelist would like to answer?
I think it really depends field to field as well. For example, if we're talking about graduate studies, specifically masters, then most likely, yes. I have seen plenty of my friends who have, most of them, they have had to take out loans and stuff. But for PhDs, it's usually pretty straightforward. You don't really have to worry much financially. But for masters and stuff, you do have to take out loans if you come from a middle class background. And if you are in a field where you know that you are most likely going to be um, placed after your masters, then I think it's very easy to repay your loan. For example, let's say somebody in computer science or something, I think would be relatively easier to get a job right after your masters. But say if you are in the life sciences, where for a decent paying job, most of the decent paying jobs usually require a PhD. So even after your masters, you will probably not be in a position to repay your loan. So this is a very context-based question, I would say. And if somebody is interested in pursuing masters or PhD, I think they should contact to their specific seniors of their field and see what the job situation looks like and what the research scene is to better evaluate their situation.
Also, just to add on to this, there's a like there was a confusion that I used to have when I was in my second year and third year, that we can't do PhD right after BTech. So no, that if you are going to the US, then probably you can pursue a PhD right after BTech. So you don't have to worry about that as well. So yeah.
That was quite a lot of valuable information, panelists. I feel like that answered a lot of our queries. Thank you for your answers. Moving on to the next question.
What are the earnings we can expect from the research field, both in the near term as the long term? I would request any one of the panelists to kindly initiate.
So, firstly, you get exposed to a dynamic research environment in the abroad universities as well as institutions. Secondly, you experience a diverse culture. These are two short-term advantages, and the long-term advantages and the most important advantage is that you make professional connections over there, good professional connections, which might help you grow rapidly, academically as well as professionally.
Would
Just a
anyone,
question. Do you, when you say earnings, do you strictly mean like monetary earnings or?
for the purpose of our discussion, yes, earning refers to majorly on the monetary part.
Okay. Right. So I think monetarily, it again depends upon your field, depends where you are pursuing it and what kind of career you are going for. If you, after a PhD, if you end up working in the industry, from what I hear, it's you can land pretty high-paying jobs because you work in the R&D departments, and those are pretty well-paying jobs. If you, however, end up staying in academia and go for postdoc or and then become a professor somewhere, I have seen what this is a trend I have seen. You will have you will not have like an eccentrically large salary, but there are often many benefits like housing, accommodation, etc., etc., that kind of like you will have a pretty comfortable life, and you won't need too much of a salary per se. And also, from what I hear, like through grants and industry collaborations and stuff, make a you can make a bag even as a professor. So yeah, that's from what I have heard.
Yeah, I would say that earnings are not much enough in the initial phase, but once you are done with your PhD or something like that, then earnings are super, they can be super massive, and those earnings come from consultancy projects which you do for large engineering firms. There are certain professors in the mechanical engineering department who have done consultancy for the Mercedes Benz, and they have they have gotten a car from Mercedes just as their compensation, and also some money as well. So yeah, I mean, it really depends the kind of consultancy that you're doing for various industry projects, and you can receive a very heavy compensation if you do consultancy projects for big companies.
Would anyone else want to add further points? This discussion did definitely clear a lot of myths. Now, moving on to the next question.
Moving on to our last question for today. Given the recent uncertainty regarding programs like DAADYs potentially seizing internships for Indian students, similar to what happened with MyTax, could you provide clarity on the future prospects of DAADYs for Indian applicants?
So as far as I know, I had a conversation with the Dean IR, and he said that the contracts with DadWise as well as MyTax have expired. Once they are signed again, I think the programs will continue. But when they will be signed, that is still uncertain.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, this is very unfortunate that such wonderful opportunities are being taken away. But I would strongly encourage everybody to not be, disheartened because of this, because there are so many institute-specific internship programs. For example, Max Planck has its own program. Then you have lots of professors. If you go to their lab website, they usually have like a join us page where you can find out if they're hiring or if they're looking for research internships and stuff. So there are plenty of opportunities, so many labs on the planet, and plenty of them that you can just contact and see if they're hiring or not. So do not get discouraged by this.
Would
So
anyone like to
basically,
add?
I actually had a discussion on this with my MyTax professor itself, and he has a brilliant opinion on this. So what he said was that majorly the engineering students that come for MyTax are from India and China, right? So now his take was that if Indians are discontinuing like the MyTax program, so they are only left with Chinese people as a majority, right? But the major issue with the Chinese people is that they do not know English properly, whereas Indians do know English like pretty well. So like I believe so that maybe in future, like after 2 3 years, my tax will reassure their relations with India. And yeah, then probably because of the demand, right? So yeah, I think it will continue, but it will take some time.
Thank you so much for your responses. Your responses today have resonated with the essence of research and provided much needed clarity for all of us willing to pursue this field. I would like to thank the panelists for their constructive insights and dedicating their precious time to go through our queries. Now let's go to the audience and look at their questions coming through via chat. Taking on a question by Ms. Maitri Gupta. How do you describe research environment as?
I would say for me, I have been extremely lucky, and especially abroad, I have noticed that the research environment is pretty good. You don't like the your professor is going to be pretty understanding, and it's not. I have seen that a lot of the times their priority is that you get trained, you have the skills, and that they're not trying to squeeze productivity out of you. And but that just has been my experience so far. And but yeah, I have also seen people who work in, let's say, laboratory settings where resources are few. For example, you have less equipment, and there's a lot of squibbling over pipettes and stuff like that, so which I think was not the best environment productivity wise and like mental health wise, but I have noticed that most of the computational fields there, the you get like the best of both worlds. You get to have a little bit of a 9 to 5 ish work schedule, and you don't have the excessive toxicity. So that has been my experience so far.
Yeah, abroad, the professors and the PhDs, they're very supportive of what we're doing and they're very helpful. And, unlike here, one thing that I noticed is there's a really good work-life balance over there, where, you're working from 9 to 5, but after that, like there's nothing over your head for the weekends or after that, which is really nice, a nice refresher.
A question that I believe is something that that goes through all of our minds when we talk about research or career is how important is CGPA when you apply for a research internship, and what CGPA is considered good for these kind of applications.
To this, I would like to add some of it. So generally, some programs it's very program specific, to be honest. So for example, DADWISE used to demand like a very high CGPA, like basically like 9 plus or around 9 was used to be the range where they used to see for the applicants. However, if you have like a very good research background prior to applying for these programs, or maybe some article or publication, so that covers most of the part for your CGPA. If you don't like have a very good CGPA to show, and apart from this, CGPA does matter in master's application, I'll say. However, in PhD, again, as mentioned, if you have like a good background research based on what you are doing, so it pretty much covers it up.
Would anyone like to add to this question?
Yeah, this is just to add to what the other panelists have said. CGPA, I would say, is really secondary. To quote one of the professors who was talking about this, he said that we get two kinds of applications. One where somebody has excelled academically but does not have too much research experience, and one where they have done great research stuff but haven't been able to do so well academically or grades wise, and they rarely find people who are good at both, so it's totally fine if you do not have great grades. You can always make up for it research internships wise and experiences wise. Of course, programs like DART specifically, they look for a high CGPA, but other than that, there are plenty of other opportunities that you can pursue.
Thank you for your insight. Would any of the audience like to ask any questions? We open the floor to questions. Do any members of the audience have any questions?
I would like to ask a question. This is for Sanket, since I am also a chemical engineering student myself, and one thing I know about myself is that I want to pursue chemical engineering, like as a core subject. I want to pursue it more, but I don't know where my interests lie. Like I'm at point zero right now. So like, how is there any resource that I can look into where I can like find what are the different opportunities in chemical engineering as like specifically?
So first of all, you need to find out your field of interest. For that, you can just go on the chemical engineering department website and find out what all the researchers in our department are working upon. And you can do some literature survey of your own. So if I had to name a few, for now, computational catalysis, heterogeneous catalysis, nanotechnology, biomicrofluidics, These are some of, and energy storage as well. These are some of the fields which are well researched upon now, as well as it will be researched upon in the future.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Moving on to another question that is arrived to us via chat. So, this is a question by Mr. Jairaj. If I have an F in any subject, can I still apply for research internships?
I think as long as the program that you are applying to does not explicitly say that you cannot have a backlog in any of the subjects, then yeah, I'm sure you totally can. Should not be a problem.
There's a question from Mr. Anish Deepak in the chat section, and I would like to add a further point. In which year did you all start research, and what is the ideal time to start research during the undergraduate program?
I
I think you
started
can
with the
start.
end of the second year. I think second year is something that you can explore what you actually like and then approach the professor of the respective field by the end of it so that you can utilize that summer for your first project.
Thank you so much. Moving on to another question, does a research internship supplement corporate internships, or like the other way around as well? Would any of the panelists like to answer this question?
I think again really depends upon your field. For example, if you are doing computational work, then maybe, I don't know, like data analysis, visualization, all of that stuff. Whether or not the skill set that you gain from your research experience, if that's a skill set that you can also, that is transferable to corporate requirements, then I suppose you could. But again, I think somebody who has done both corporate and research, I think they would be able to answer that better.
Anyone would like to add on to the answer? I, Thank you so much. Moving on to another question. So, do online certifications from good institutes in our specific field of interest, say machine learning, matter while applying for research work, especially for the first time?
They're definitely a plus, but I don't think that's specifically something that they're looking for. It's helpful when you're trying to like justify your interest, right? Because I mean, when you are emailing a professor, you can just say I am interested in ABC XYZ field. But when you say I am interested in ABC XYZ field, I also did a course in this field, and through assignments, etc., etc. It's just a nice talking point to like prove that it's an action that you have taken to prove that you are in fact interested in that field. I think that's the purpose that it serves. And maybe it can be a CV point. Other than that, I don't think it really matters.
Would anyone else want to add further points? So now, moving on to the next question, how can one utilize research papers to gain knowledge? What should be our approach while reading them?
So if students are reading the research articles for first time, it can be quite hectic and frustrating because you are not familiar with most of the terminology in it. So you have to just bear with the process. Keep on reading the research articles. The terminology or the concepts which you are not understanding very well, find the books or the literature relevant to that concepts and terminologies. And I think over a time you will be able to decode the papers easily.
Thanks a lot. This question is particularly directed towards Srijan. Others might answer it as well. So, Mr. Ritul Ranjan replied to Srijan, "How is interacting with diverse people beneficiary for one while doing a research, while doing masters abroad or in a diverse environment?"
So yeah, actually, like I was doing internship in the energy engineering field. So I was like interacting with people from China, Taiwan, Japan. So they were all giving me various insights on how, energy engineering, like energy prospects are there in various countries, in their own countries. So I think that helps to understand a bigger picture of the world rather than just focusing on India. So yeah, I think that answers the question.
I would like to add to that that even if we take career and academics, like if that takes a sideline, it's just in general for your own personal growth, for developing a nice personality. It's very nice to be surrounded by lots of varied perspectives, I would say. So, in general, it's a very good idea to have a diverse set of people around you.
I have a question. So, what if the area that ends up catching your interest, it's not widely like researched upon by IIT KGP? So, how do you start then? Like, do you still have projects you can work under the professor if it's not researched upon in our institute specifically?
You can approach professors from other IITs or even ISC. The, if there's someone, a lot of people do that.
Okay, thank you.
To add to what Pradyum said, of course, there are plenty of other professors that you can approach. Other than that, sometimes when you're just starting out, it's not so much what the research problem is that is important, but also like what kind of skills are you gaining? Because a lot of these skills are transferable to all different kinds of projects, right? So the field that you actually want to work on, if you think there are a certain types of skills that they require, if you can get that on a different project that might not be entirely related to your field, if you can get that at IIT KGP, if none of the professors from other IITs or IISCs are responding to you, then that's also something that you can do. Because pehle, like in your first experience, like nobody knows what they actually want to do. It's just, you have to gain skills and see, put a foot in and see how if it's suiting you or not, etc. So yeah.
I had a question, like regarding when we start out, other than the coursework provided by IIT Kharagpur, how do we actually build upon the things that we really need to? Like, suppose say I'm from the biotech department, right? So I want to pursue my further research in bioinformatics and etc. Like Miss Nishita saying, but how do I like proceed? Where do I start learning whatever I want to?
Yeah, so for let's say bioinformatics specifically, again, there are plenty of courses that you can just audit on Coursera and stuff. That's a pretty, and they explain things very well. There are a few by UCSD, I believe, and also Johns Hopkins, and it's just, go through them, check out their videos, see if that's something that you enjoy. The other thing that I would say is don't just a lot of the people they just start coding and stuff from by looking at YouTube or just एक tutorial hai, let me just go through the tutorial. I don't think that's a very that's a way of gaining skills that can get you demotivated very easily. I would say there are several online platforms that you can just see if they have some specific problem that you can uh, solve through coding. So when you have that sort of approach of like, problem specific coding, then you will. It's also exciting. It's more fun, and you can that'll keep you motivated. So I think these would
Okay.
be like the initial steps you can take, and then afterwards, of course, just contact a professor. I think it's very important to properly get research guidance from a professor eventually as well.
Okay. How much of a gap is there between whatever the coursework is provided to us and what's required?
I think the coursework, specifically our bioinfo coursework, it's like it gives you a bunch of things that you can do, but you don't have an idea of what kind of real world problems you can solve using those tools and skills. So the gap comes in, like, do you want to apply it to cancer, or do what kind of, and like, you don't get to handle real world data with the courses. So I think handling real world data, understanding the nuances, किस तरह के problems आते हैं, like the ups and downs of a project, I think that is something that a course cannot give you, and that only comes from working on a proper project. That's what I would say.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Are there any more questions from the audience? I believe this marks the end of the questions in our webinar today. For more such insightful and informative sessions, please feel free to check out the SWG app and website dedicated to the welfare of students. This brings us to the end of this insightful session. I am sure our listeners would have taken some valuable fun days from this session, and we hope to see them on the other side of this talk in the upcoming years. We would like to thank the audience for their patient hearing and hope you learned many things with us and got your queries cleared. Last but not least, I would like to acknowledge all my teammates from Student Welfare Group who have contributed to making this event a huge success. Thank you, panelists, Student Welfare Group members, and attendees.